What happens when the owner of a restaurant chain grabs a mop after closing and hears something he was never supposed to hear? Darren Brooks stood outside Store 13, a mid-sized diner tucked into a strip mall off the interstate. It was past 11. The place had closed an hour ago, but the lights were still on inside. He pulled the bill of his trucker cap lower over his eyes and adjusted the fake name tag clipped to his borrowed uniform shirt. Derek, it said. He'd built this chain himself. One store, one grill, one late-night cleanup at a time. Now there were 18. But lately, he'd been hearing things that didn't sit right. Turnover was rising. A few complaints trickled in about poor treatment. Nothing huge, but enough to raise a flag. He hadn't met the staff here before Store 13 was one of the newer ones picked up in a small franchise acquisition 2 years ago. The team had stayed on, and most of them had only seen corporate photos of him. He'd aged a bit since then, lost weight, grew some facial hair. Changed his voice a little. Nobody batted an eye when he showed up earlier that day as the new night shift trainee, sent over to help with closing duties due to staff shortages. Shortage made sense. 2 servers had quit the same week, and 1 cook walked out mid-shift last Thursday. The district manager, Carla, said the store was just having a rough patch. Darren didn't buy it. He spent the day shadowing the kitchen, kept his head down, asked questions like a rookie. He noticed things. How the dishwasher, a quiet man named Lewis, barely spoke but cleaned nonstop. How the oldest waitress, Gina, never complained when covering double tables. And how the manager, Trent, barked orders but barely lifted a finger himself. At closing, Darren offered to stay late and help mop. Trent didn't argue, just tossed him the mop like he was tossing trash. The kitchen emptied out by 11:30. Darren was scrubbing near the back hallway when he heard voices in the break room. The door was cracked. He glanced around. No one else was in sight. He heard Gina's voice first. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to mix up the orders. You didn't mean to." "Gee, what a shocker," Trent snapped. "Maybe if you weren't so slow, you could get something right for once." "I've been here 6 years," she said, her voice tight. "And maybe that's 6 years too long," Trent shot back. "You walk around like you matter here, you don't. You're replaceable." There was silence. Then Gina said, barely above a whisper, "I just want to do a good job." Darren stood frozen. His grip on the mop handle tightened. He didn't move. He listened. Trent laughed. "Good job. You can't even keep your apron clean. You're lucky I don't put you back on breakfast shifts like the newbies. Hell, maybe I should. Or better yet, maybe I'll cut your hours. Bet that'd shut you up." Darren stepped back, his heart pounding. He'd seen enough. He grabbed the mop bucket, wheeled it into the back, and waited 10 more minutes. When Trent finally came out, Gina was gone. Her purse was missing from the hook. "Hey," Trent said, barely glancing at him. "You done mopping, Derek?" "Yeah," Darren said. "Spotless?" Trent didn't hear the edge in his voice. He just nodded and walked off, whistling. Darren stood in the quiet kitchen, staring at the floor. He'd built this company from scratch, and somewhere along the way, this is what it had turned into. He couldn't sleep that night. Not because of what he heard, but because of how long it might have been happening. Darren arrived at Store 13 the next evening 10 minutes before the shift started. He parked in the far corner of the lot, behind a rusted-out pickup that hadn't moved since yesterday. The air smelled like fried oil and asphalt. He sat in the driver's seat for a minute, staring at the glowing diner sign. He hadn't slept more than a few hours. Gina's voice kept replaying in his head, wavering on the edge of breaking. He walked in through the back entrance again, tying the apron around his waist. Inside, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly. Lewis was already at the sink, hands elbow-deep in suds. He nodded toward Darren but didn't speak. "Morning, Derek," called out a younger woman from the corner prep station. Her name tag read Emily. She looked barely old enough to vote. "Hope you're ready for another wild one." "Always," Darren said. Trent was nowhere in sight. Emily leaned in slightly. "He's late again. He usually rolls in once the rush starts, then just stands around pretending to check the schedule." Darren wiped off the prep counter with a fresh towel. "Busy nights?" "Too busy," she said. "We're short again," Gina called out. "First time ever, I think." Darren didn't respond. He could guess why. Emily scraped a bowl of coleslaw into a container and added, "She's solid. I mean, she's older, but she carries more than anyone. That lady doesn't stop moving." The door swung open behind them, and Trent finally entered to go cup in hand. "All right, let's go, people." "Chop chop," he said, not looking at anyone. "Hey, Trent," Emily said, "do we have anyone covering Gina's section?" "Nope," Trent said flatly. "You can handle it. You've got legs," Emily blinked. "That's 5 tables. You want me to call corporate and tell them you can't handle 5 tables?" he said, sipping his drink. Darren watched her nod silently and returned to chopping pickles. The dinner rush started slow but picked up fast. Orders piled in. Darren stayed on the fryer, dropping baskets and keeping the line supplied. Lewis worked like a machine, cleaning trays and scrubbing as fast as they came in. No breaks, no chatter. By 7, the kitchen was loud and tense. Trent barked from the expo window every few minutes, often just to say something obvious. "Derek, you're slow on fries. Let's move it, rookie." "Lewis, there's a spot on that plate. You want customers seeing that." Darren kept his head down and said nothing. But he didn't miss the way Lewis's jaw tensed every time Trent opened his mouth. At one point, Emily leaned in through the side of the window. "Hey, the guy at table 12 says his patty's raw." Trent rolled his eyes. "Tell him that's how we serve them now, artisan style." "I'm serious." "It's cold in the middle." "Then bring it back and tell him to learn how to order. Medium rare means pink." Emily hesitated. "It's purple." Trent leaned toward her. "You're wasting time. Get the plate, toss it, re-ring it under someone else's name." "I'm not comping it." "But he's already upset. Then smile more. That's what tips are for." Emily grabbed the plate and walked off. Darren turned back to his station, hands tight on the tongs. Heat rose from the fryer, but it wasn't what made his neck flush. By 8, the line was backed up. Orders were late. Lewis knocked a tray off the drying rack and a dish shattered. Trent stormed over. "You serious, man? That plate was clean. That's $3 gone." Lewis opened his mouth, but Trent cut him off. "Next time, try using your eyes." Lewis bent down silently to clean the shards. Darren walked over and crouched beside him, helping scoop the pieces with a towel. "You okay?" Lewis nodded once, eyes on the floor. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Trent disappeared for half an hour. When he returned, he smelled like cigarettes and cheap cologne. At closing, only 3 staff remained: Darren, Lewis, and Emily. Emily slumped into a booth, rubbing her calves. "I've been on my feet since noon." "You didn't take a break?" Darren asked. "No time." Trent said we were in the weeds. That's his excuse for everything. Lewis walked past carrying a bucket, then paused. "Emily's been covering 2 sections. She shouldn't have to do that." Trent walked in from the office, keys jingling. "All right, let's wrap it up." "I've got somewhere to be." Emily stood. "Wait, are you clocking out?" "Yeah, but there's still dishes and the floors." "Yeah, and you're still on the clock," he said. "Consider it practice. You want a promotion someday, right?" She stared at him. "I never said that." "Well, maybe you should. Then you'd understand how leadership works. Want me to write you up for the attitude?" Lewis stepped in. "She hasn't even eaten." Trent turned to him. "You want to join her on the write-up?" "No one's disrespecting you," Darren said, stepping forward. Trent squinted at him. "I'm sorry, what?" "I said no one's disrespecting you, but you're walking out while your team is drowning. You've been here 2 days. Don't talk to me about my team." Darren pulled the name tag from his chest and set it on the prep table. "My name's not Derek, it's Darren Brooks." "I'm the owner." Trent's face drained of color. Lewis stood frozen. Emily looked between them, her mouth slightly open. Darren continued, "I've been watching. You've created a culture where fear replaces respect. You humiliate staff, ignore customer concerns, and walk away from your responsibilities." Trent opened his mouth, but Darren cut him off. "You're done here, effective immediately. You can't just, I can and I am. You've been operating unchecked for too long." Emily stepped back, visibly shaking. Darren turned to her. "You okay?" She nodded slowly, eyes wide. "Go sit down," he said. "Both of you, this place is closed for the night." Lewis hesitated. "Should we finish cleaning?" "No. I'll take care of it." They stepped away, whispering to each other in disbelief. Darren picked up the mop again, the same one he'd been using the night before. He filled the bucket, pushed it to the corner, and got to work. There were a lot of things he couldn't fix overnight, but this was a start. The next morning, Darren arrived at the restaurant well before opening, dressed in his usual attire: pressed shirt, blazer, clean-shaven, no apron, no alias. He didn't knock. He used his key. The prep lights were on, and one of the line cooks, a lanky kid named Marcus, was chopping onions at the back. He froze when he saw Darren walk in. "You wait, you're not." "You're the owner," Darren nodded. "Where's Carla?" "District manager." "She's supposed to swing by tomorrow, I think." "Call her. Tell her I need her here today." "Noon." Marcus hesitated. "Is something wrong?" "Not anymore," Darren said. "But I need her here." Marcus stepped aside and reached for the phone. Darren walked toward the office, opened the door, and took a long breath. The desk was cluttered. Sticky notes on the monitor, a stack of receipts piled unevenly, one of the drawers slightly ajar. On the wall, a whiteboard listed weekly goals, none of them checked off. He pulled out the chair and sat down. For the next hour, he reviewed every schedule, every payroll sheet, and every incident report. There weren't many reports filed which said more than any of the numbers. He checked surveillance footage, skimming through timestamps from the last few weeks. Patterns emerged: Trent clocking out early, employees staying late without logging hours. A few clips showed Lewis still scrubbing equipment well past midnight while Trent sat in the front booth on his phone. At 10:30, Darren stepped out to the floor. Emily was setting up salt shakers. She turned, startled. "Oh, I didn't expect you so early. You're scheduled at 11. "Yeah, I just figured I'd get a jump on side work. It piles up." "Sit down for a second," she blinked. "Am I in trouble?" "No, I want to talk." She sat in the nearest booth, her posture guarded. "Did Trent ever ask you to work off the clock?" She glanced around, then looked back at him. "Yeah, a few times. Said it was just a few minutes to help the team, but it was never just a few." "And did you feel like you could say no?" "I tried once." "He said if I wanted to be seen as reliable, I had to be flexible." Darren folded his hands on the table. "Did anyone else get that same treatment?" "I think Lewis did. And Gina, for sure. She always stayed late, even when she seemed dead on her feet." Darren nodded once. "Thank you for telling me that." He stood and walked back toward the kitchen. Lewis had just arrived, tying his apron at the sink. "Lewis." Lewis turned, surprised. "I need your help with something," Darren said. "But first, you're being paid for every hour you've worked from this day on." "If that's ever not the case, I want you to call me directly." Lewis's face didn't change, but something in his shoulders eased. "Okay, good, come with me." They walked to the back office. Darren opened the utility cabinet and handed Lewis a folder. "This is a list of every equipment issue reported in the last 3 months. You've been fixing things on your own, haven't you?" Lewis didn't speak for a moment. Then he nodded. "Some stuff just needed tightening. I didn't want it to slow down the line." "That's not your job. And you shouldn't be doing it unpaid." Lewis looked down at the folder, unsure what to say. "I want you to help me review the maintenance logs, show me what's still broken and what's been patched. We're going to get a full service crew in here by Monday." Lewis opened the folder slowly. "All right." At noon sharp, Carla arrived. She walked in with her tablet in hand, wearing a blazer too formal for the setting and a forced smile that faded the moment she saw Darren sitting behind the desk. "Mr. Brooks," she said. "I wasn't expecting." "I asked Marcus to call you." She stepped in, closing the door behind her. "Is everything all right?" "No, sit down." She hesitated, then slowly lowered herself into the chair. Darren set a printed schedule on the table between them. "Did you approve these hours?" "I reviewed them, yes." "You didn't notice that Trent was consistently under scheduling during peak shifts?" "Well, I assumed he was making adjustments based on the staff he had available." "Did you follow up after 2 servers resigned in the same week?" I asked him about it. "He said it was personal reasons." "And you believed that without asking the employees?" Carla shifted. "I trust my managers to manage, and when they don't," she didn't answer. "You've been district manager for how long?" 3 years. "During that time, did you ever interview floor staff directly?" "I've spoken to a few during visits, but that's not standard protocol." "It is now." Darren leaned forward. "I was here 2 nights. That's all it took to find out how much damage has been done. You've been here 3 years and missed all of it." Carla's voice tightened. "I wasn't aware of any misconduct, because you didn't look." She opened her mouth again, but he raised a hand. "I'm rotating you out, effective today. You'll be reassigned to corporate logistics for a full review period. If that doesn't suit you, you're free to resign." Carla's eyes narrowed. "You're demoting me." "I'm giving you a chance to rebuild trust. Whether you take it is up to you." She stood slowly. "What about the store?" I'll be managing it personally for the next 2 weeks. After that, we'll hire a new general manager, someone who understands what leadership actually looks like." She left without another word. Darren stepped out of the office and found Emily still wiping down the counters. "Can you stay after your shift today?" he asked. "I'd like to talk about something." She nodded, cautious. He walked back to the kitchen. Louis was still at the prep table, folder open beside him. "We're going to take this place apart piece by piece," Darren said. "You ready?" Louis looked up. Yeah. By late afternoon, the pace slowed. Darren worked the line himself during dinner, side by side with Marcus and a part-time cook named Ree. He didn't take a break, neither did they. But for the first time, the kitchen didn't feel strained. It felt focused. After close, Darren called Emily into the office. "I watched how you handled the floor today," he said. "You kept it moving. You coached the new girl. You stepped in when Marcus got backed up on to-go orders. That's management material." She blinked. "Me? I want to train you for assistant manager, not tomorrow, not next week, but if you're interested, we'll start shadowing shifts together." She looked stunned. You thought you had to keep your head down and survive. I don't want anyone here surviving. I want them thriving." Emily exhaled slowly. "Then yeah, I'm interested. Good, we'll start with scheduling. You'll help build the next one." He handed her a clipboard with blank sheets. "Really," she said, "you've been doing the job already. You just didn't have the title." She took the clipboard in both hands, her voice quiet. "Thank you." Darren stood and pushed the chair back. "Go home, get some sleep. Tomorrow's a new start." She left, and Darren sat alone in the quiet office. The whiteboard still hung crooked on the wall. He erased it, every line, every scribbled number. Then he wrote a single sentence in black marker. "Respect starts at the top." He capped the pen, leaned back, and listened to the silence, not the kind that came from exhaustion, but the kind that followed change. Darren arrived at Store 13 the following Monday at 5:30 in the morning. The street was still quiet, the sky a dull slate. He unlocked the back door and stepped into the kitchen, flicking on the overhead lights. The air smelled faintly of bleach and metal. Louis had cleaned the fryer trays the night before and left a handwritten note about a loose hinge on the walk-in cooler. Darren placed the note on the desk in the office and dialed the maintenance service before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. The staff began trickling in by 6:30. Marcus arrived first, carrying a box of clean aprons from the laundromat. Ree followed, still in her college hoodie, yawning behind a coffee cup. Emily came in just after 7, clipboard in one hand, schedule printouts in the other. She didn't pause at the door or scan the room like she had in the past. She walked straight to the office, dropped the papers on the desk, and said, "Louis told me the cooler door's acting up. I moved the dairy delivery to the back fridge. It'll hold for the day." Darren nodded. "Good catch." She tapped the edge of the clipboard. "Also, Marcus has class Wednesdays at 2. I adjusted his shifts, but I need to know if we're keeping the Saturday double open or bringing someone in. We're posting for 2 new hires this week. Until then, we'll rotate coverage. I'll take Saturday," she said. "I'm already here in the mornings." Darren looked at her. "You sure? It's fine. I'm used to it." He shook his head. "No, if you're going to step into leadership, I want you working smart, not just working hard. We'll split the shift." She didn't argue, just nodded and made a note. By 8, the doors opened and the first customers filtered in, mostly regulars, truckers, and retirees who knew the menu by heart. Darren stayed on the floor during the breakfast rush, circulating between the counter and the kitchen pass. He didn't bark orders. He didn't hover. He just filled coffee, cleared empty mugs, and watched. The team worked tighter than before. Not perfect. Marcus still forgot to label the prep bins, and Ree dropped a tray of toast, but they moved with a sense of purpose. There was no shouting, no tension bleeding into the food line. Around 10, Gina walked in through the front doors, her uniform folded neatly over her arm. She looked rested but uncertain, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Darren. He stepped out from behind the counter. "Glad you came," she nodded slowly. "Didn't know if I still had a job." "You do, but only if you want it." She hesitated. "I don't want to get pushed around again." "You won't," Darren said. "That ends with me." She looked at him for a long moment, then she said, "All right," and walked to the back to clock in. By noon, Carla's replacement arrived a mid-30s operations lead named Julian, transferred from a high-performing district 2 counties over. He stepped into the office, shook Darren's hand firmly, and said, "I read through the personnel files and incident records. I've already got questions." "Good," Darren said. "I want you asking them every week." Julian spent the afternoon shadowing the floor. He didn't interfere, he just watched. At 3, he pulled Emily aside near the expo window. "You've been here how long?" 4 years. "You ever been asked to help with training before?" She shook her head. "You're going to now. I need a peer trainer on site until we get a new GM in. Can you handle that?" She blinked. "Yes." "I can. Then I'll get your name on the company's training roster." She didn't say anything right away. Then, "Thanks for seeing what we do here." Julian gave a short nod and returned to reviewing the inventory list. That evening, as the dinner rush picked up, Darren stayed behind the counter helping with drink orders. He noticed something small but telling. The staff had started calling each other by name more often. Not just hey or line or server, but actual names. It wasn't much, but it was something. Midway through the shift, a customer middle-aged, impatient snapped at Ree over a missing side of ranch. She apologized and rushed to get it. Darren caught the man's eye as he passed the booth. "Everything all right?" "She took forever. I asked twice." "She's new," Darren said. "But she's working hard. If you're not satisfied, I can comp the side. But I won't tolerate anyone speaking to my staff with disrespect." The man scoffed, but didn't reply. He ate in silence the rest of the meal. As the shift wound down, Darren gathered the team in the back before closing. "I want to thank you all," he said. "The last few days have been a reset, and I know that's not easy, but I'm seeing effort. I'm seeing pride again. That matters." Lewis stood near the sink, arms folded, watching quietly. Gina leaned against the prep table, her expression unreadable. Emily stood at his side, clipboard tucked under one arm. "We'll keep hiring," Darren continued. "We'll improve the pay structure, and we're going to build a team here that doesn't just survive the rush but takes pride in it." Gina finally spoke. "What happens when the next manager comes in?" "How do we know they won't be like the last one?" Darren looked around the room. "Because this time you'll help choose them. Emily and Lewis will sit in on the second-round interviews. You've earned that right." Gina nodded once. It wasn't enthusiasm, but it was trust. After the meeting, Darren stayed behind to review the updated scheduling binder. Emily had color-coded the shifts by role, with handwritten notes in the margins cover requests, school conflicts, and time-off balances. It was the kind of attention to detail that didn't show up on spreadsheets. It showed up in the shifts that didn't collapse when someone called out sick. He closed the binder and leaned back in the chair. The office was still small, still cluttered, but it felt different now. Not cleaner. Just grounded. Before locking up, he walked the line one last time. The kitchen smelled of lemon cleaner and grease normal, lived in. The kind of smell that told you people had worked here, hard, and would again tomorrow. As he turned off the lights, he paused at the front counter, where a stack of receipts waited to be filed. He picked one up, glanced at the time-stamp 6:45 p.m. Cheeseburger combo, paid in cash. It was nothing special, but it was honest. He left it there. Then he stepped outside, locking the door behind him. The sign above the diner still buzzed faintly in the night. Darren looked up at it, then down the quiet street. He didn't build this place just to serve food. He built it to serve people. And now, finally, it could.